Hi Group 1, here are my reflections on SWM5112 Research for Social Work Practice. I really appreciated how each week what we learnt built on the week previously and how that really helped us for all of our assessments. Firstly, we look at research paradigms, and I found that really interesting because depending on what your ontology is, the way that you view the world, will really influence the kind of research that you're going to undertake, whether it be positivist, interpretivist, critical, and pragmatic. And a little bit later, I'll discuss where I sit on those things. So having that in mind before you even start is really important. It's then important to think about how you're going to produce research ethically. One of the things that really impacted me was the insider and outsider research. When it came to the research topic I was looking at children who have parents with a mental illness and the services offered to them. I'm actually a child who has a parent with a mental illness, so for me, this research, I was an insider, and so I had to think each step of the way whether I was inputting my own biases into this or whether I was actually reading the information that was out there. Also, I'm looking at working with adolescents in my research design, and so that's a real thing to consider ethically. How am I going to care for and protect, and how am I going to get permission for these children? So being aware of that was something that impacted me as well. Appraising research, analysing, interpreting, evaluating and reasoning our research really helped me grasp the research and the literature that was out there on my topic, and really helped me find gaps in the research. I found gaps looking at children who are parent with a mental illness and how peer support programs impact their school engagement, and I found that something really interesting that I wanted to focus on. My research question that I developed was, what influence do peer support programs for adolescents who have a parent with a mental illness have on social relationships and school engagement? This was a descriptive research question, and my aim was to describe the relationships. But I really want to refine my question to make it more specific, as I feel this may be too broad and too clear. And in research, that's something we need to be doing the whole time, critically evaluating at each step of the way. So I would like to change my research question to, does the participation in peer support programs for adolescents who have a parent with a mental illness impact the level of school engagement and academic performance? This is still descriptive in focus, looking at the relationship between peer support programs and school engagement, but it's more focused. And I believe this will give really good insight into the benefits of peer support programs. I would aim to use a mixed method research design. I believe that qualitative and quantitative data are both incredibly important in their own right, but I believe this research question would really benefit from a mixed method design. I would look at the numbers for how children are travelling in their academic studies before the program and after, and measure those quantitatively. But I would also conduct interviews and questionnaires and gather qualitative data as to the impact that it's having. I would use a judgment and purposive sampling because I believe it's a really specific sample that I'm looking for, and so I want to make sure that I'm getting the right group of people. I would then recruit from primary schools, high schools. I would recruit from programs that are already running these peer support programs for children who have parents with a mental illness, and from there I would get in contact with the school as well. So I can see that each week everything I learned has helped me to understand how I'm going to conduct my research. Myself as a social work practitioner. At the start, I would have considered myself as a positivist researcher. I had a background in psychology, and I wanted measurable outcomes. I wanted to know cause and effect. However, throughout the semester, I really found that this changed as I began to understand different areas of research and different ways that we can ask questions. And I found myself aligning more with a pragmatic approach to research, one that is a bit more fluid, not a one-size-fits-all kind of method, but looking at each group I'm going to analyse and working from there. I find I view the world not as black and white, but a bit more grey, and so that's why I consider myself more in the pragmatic paradigm now. As I mentioned earlier, critical reflection is such an incredibly important part of social work research. Each step of the way, I found myself constantly asking questions. I would critically reflect when choosing my research question. I had to ask myself about my own values and assumptions, as I shared earlier, about children who have a parent with a mental illness. I had to make sure I was not assuming, but I was asking the correct questions. I used critical reflection as I engaged with the unit material, as I spent time reading articles, listening to lectures, and completing weekly activities and weekly reflections. Within each aspect of the unit, I would constantly ask, what have I learnt this week? How will this impact on my future practice as a social worker? Which paradigm, method, and methodology do I align with? And what biases are affecting my learning and engaging this week? I believe learning how to critically reflect throughout this course has made me a better practitioner. There are my references for the slideshow if you'd like to have a look. Thanks.